Great. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Miriam Frollo, a CPFA volunteer, and want to thank you for attending today's Let's Talk Adoption conference. Welcome to the session called Insight on Effective and Open Communication with Your Adopted Child, and it is an adult adoptee panel. Our presenter moderator for today's panel is Yael Adler, and I'll tell you a little bit about her. And she'll come on and she will introduce the three panelists that she has with her. Yael Adler is a Romanian adoptee and author and has written the book From Gypsy to Jersey to share her uplifting personal story in hopes of aspiring and helping other adoptees who want to learn more about their past and uncover their roots. Yael shares her hopes and fears as she makes the journey back, ultimately connecting with her Roma Gypsy family and learning about a fascinating and misunderstood culture that is undeniably a part of who she is today. That's what her book is about. Yael has a bachelor's degree in journalism and is currently director of marketing for Thrive Alliance Group, a company that implements mental health support services for public school districts. Married and the mother of three, Yael and her family live in New Jersey. She enjoys being active in the adoption community and savors every opportunity to listen and learn from other adoptees, as well as adoptive parents and birth families. To learn more about Yael, you can visit her website at www.fromgypsytojersey.com. And we will have that on the last screen, so you don't have to write it down just now. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Yael Adler and her panelists.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session. I'm really excited to be moderating today and to have you all here to speak on the really important topic of insights on effective and open communication with your adopted child. I was actually speaking to a group of adoptive parents a few months ago, and as I was sharing some personal anecdotes about conversations I had with my parents regarding my adoption, I was looking back at different times in my life, some farther back in time and some more recent. And I was really reflecting on how we could have improved on those conversations that were had. You know, how looking at those scenarios could my parents have played a more supportive role, leaving me to feel more secure, less confused, and more confident about my adoption. Sometimes it's really just about finding the right words to say that make all the difference in the conversations that we have. And that is where this idea for this panel discussion was born. So I hope that you all find value in what we are going to talk about today. I'm really lucky to be joined by such wonderful adult adoptees who have volunteered their time today to share with you who they are, where they are in their adoption journey, and a personal story that has had a large impact on them that we can all really look at together and say, how can we ourselves show more support and have an even stronger relationship with our child? Towards the end, we're going to open it up for some Q&A. I really encourage all of you to think of some questions so that you can get the most out of this conversation. So feel free, if a question pops up, just jot it down and you can type it in the chat. We're going to save it for the Q&A portion towards the end. Okay, so without any further ado, I want to welcome our panelists. We have another Romanian adoptee, Michelle. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi, thank you for having me.
We have Keith Scirillo, who was born in New York. Great to have you, Keith.
Oh, thank you.
And we have Amanda McKinstry, who was born in New York as well, in the Bronx. So glad to have you here, Amanda.
Thank you for having me.
Michelle, why don't we begin with you? If you could start by sharing a little bit about yourself, some background and on your adoption and where you are right now.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, hi everyone. My name is Michelle McManus. I am an international adoptee born in Romania in 1988. After 20 days after I was born, I was placed into an orphanage by my biological mother. I spent the first 2 years living there until I was adopted by a wonderful American family. I have a closed adoption. At 8 years old, I was told I was adopted by my adoptive father. That was a very scary time for me. It was very emotional. I had a lot of questions, and I also was very sad because my adoptive mother was not there, part of that conversation. Um, you know, I would say about maybe high school was probably the start of my toughest years with my adoption. I did a lot of self-harm. I felt just very lost and alone. And I was raised in such a huge Italian family. So I know I was never alone, but I felt alone in my own head, and alone in my thoughts and my emotions. I started this search in high school, and it took me a long time, about 5 years, to find my biological family. But with the help of a private investigator in Romania, he found my family in 3 weeks. What I thought was going to be a beautiful, happy reunion of my mother welcoming me in open arms, it turned out to be a rejection. So I thought at the time, um, which devastated me. And then more devastating news, I found out I was the product of rape. And, sadly ironic, a year before I was sexually assaulted. So that brought even more emotions and triggers to me as well. With the news of my birth father, I questioned myself as a person. I said I'm 50% his DNA. So what kind of person does that make me? And I know I'm not a bad person, but that's where my mind went. But on a happier note, I did find out I have a younger brother and a younger sister. They're both half siblings. They share the same father. But the past 10 years with the rejection of my birth mother and the news of my birth father, really, I started to decline in my mental health big time. I went through bad depression, anxiety, thoughts and actions of suicide, unfortunately, um, until recently. um, a few months ago, I discovered a letter from my birth mother that she wrote to me 10 years ago. And I never received that letter, or I never saw it. I had it in my possession for 10 years. And I know it sounds crazy, but it was just very strange at the time because I was learning to let her go for my own mental health. That at the time I wrote a letter to let her go, which is part of my healing journey, I I found her letter. So I knew it was a sign to not, it wasn't time for me yet. Um, but we are recently in reunion, which comes in a lot of ups and downs, a lot of emotions behind it. But I am taking it one step at a time and just hoping that we will have a beautiful relationship going forward. But to share a little bit about my healing journey, 2 years ago, I was really struggling with depression. That during the pandemic specifically, because I felt very isolated during that time from my family and friends, I almost gave up on myself. But instead, I created Baby Be Brave, which is a social media platform it's an adoption community page for other adoptees to find support and love, the support that I wish I had growing up. And during that time, I met so many other adoptees, including all of you, that just has helped me so much in my healing. And you all have saved my life. The adoption community saved my life, and I wouldn't be here without all of you. So thank you for your time. I do want to end with one little fun ending note. Yael and I share a very amazing connection where her and I were both adopted from the same agency. The same lawyer handled our case, and the same private investigator found our biological families. So that brought us even closer, and I do consider Yael my adoptee sister, my Romanian adoptee sister. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for sharing all of that. You've really, made your mark on the adoption community, and you've really provided a ton of support for other people as well. So the feeling is definitely mutual. And yes, I do believe that that's a really rare occurrence when you can say that you shared the same agency, attorney, as well as private investigator with another adoptee. Yes.
Thank
Keith,
you.
We'd love to hear from you next.
Hello, how's everybody doing? My name is Keith Cirillo. I was born in New York City in 1979, so I'll be 43 pretty soon. Basically, the start of my journey was that I was in the hospital for about a month and a half infant drug withdrawals. Then I went to the Shirillo family, my family I grew up with, but they officially adopted me when I was 4 years old. So my adoption went through then. Fast forward a little bit, I didn't know I was adopted my whole life until I was 33 years old, or when I figured it out. I was never supposed to know. I was told that. I was never supposed to find out. So a little bit of background. My biological mother was Puerto Rican. My biological father is Hungarian. So that's my descent. And I grew up in an Italian Jewish family. So yeah, and I was raised with 5 other children. So there were 6 of us in my family. I'm the only one that's adopted. And then in my biological family, my mother had 8 children, and we were all relinquished for adoption. So I am in reunion with my biological father. My biological mother had passed 2 years before I found out about being adopted, so I never had that opportunity to meet her. I did eventually find all my other siblings that were also relinquished for adoption. 2 of them had already passed in their early 30s, so I never met them. Another brother of mine who I had met about 3 or 4 times, he passed a couple of years ago. He was about 45, 46 years old. Yeah, so, there's a lot to my story, and that's kind of like the very condensed version. And I'm always going to smile as I tell it, even though it's very painful. But, what else? What can I do, right? I mean, it's my life to live now, no matter what I've been through. And yeah, I'm a father. I have 2 children of my own. So, that's been the greatest part of my life. And also connected with the community. Ever since I discovered I was adopted, I sort of have been connecting with other adoptees and, birth parents, adoptive parents. I've had a few opportunities to speak at a few conferences, do a couple podcast interviews. But the greatest and most special part is the one-on-one connections with people. Yeah, I believe that's where the true work and healing and everything else has been for me. So I welcome your questions. I'm probably a little bit better at that, when you ask questions, I'm able to answer them. But that's my story, a very condensed version. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. I think there's a lot to say about that, just turning pain into purpose, as well as being a late discovery adoptee. A lot of great things there. Hopefully we'll dig a little deeper into that as we share our personal stories in a little bit. Amanda, can you share a little bit about yourself, some background and where you are right now in your journey?
Yes, of course. Hello, everybody. My name is Amanda McKinstry. I am a domestic adoptee. I was adopted at 3 days old from the Bronx, New York. And something interesting that I just found out recently, that my adoptive parents and my birth mother were actually in communication from when she was about, I'm going to say 7 months pregnant, up until the time that she gave birth to me. So my parents, she would call and give my mom updates on her pregnancy. So my birth mother had a lot of involvement on choosing the family that I was going to be placed with. When I was actually born, my parents got a phone call that, come get your baby girl. And the social workers were actually trying to talk my birth mother out of letting me go home with them because they were white. So I grew up in an Italian American, Irish American household, lots of food, lots of parties, stuff like that. Very big family, big on food, I would say. But I also have a brother who was actually adopted about a year after me, and he was actually adopted from New Mexico. So he is Mexican and he is Native American. So we grew up together. We grew up very, very close. We're still very close to this day, even though we have our ups and downs, but that is my brother. Nobody could tell me different. I decided to actually start the journey and find my biological family when I was in high school, kind of like Michelle's story. I was really struggling with the identity piece of it. I was nearing my junior year. I said, how am I supposed to know what I'm going to go to school for, what I'm going to be when I get older? And I have no idea where I come from. I said, how am I supposed to move forward? So my adoptive mother agreed. And what she did is she said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And back then they used to have, I don't know if you guys remember on Montel Williams or these shows where they would have find long lost family members. So I know it might sound a little corny, but we reached out to one of those numbers. And unfortunately, my mother had a very common name, so we had no luck. So there was a lot of digging and everything that was done, but we actually were able to narrow down the women, and we actually did the tri-state area. So everyone that lived in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, stuff like that, we reached out to. My adoptive mother decided to get a PO box, and she said, we'll have everything returned to this address. And then I'm going to tell you, probably within 3 weeks of sending those letters out, we received a letter, and she said, I am the person you are looking for. So I think it was that night I had my adoptive mother. I was like, you have to call her. I was like, she left the number, you have to call her. So called her, spoke to her on the phone, and found that I had a sister. So I do have a half sister. She is 3.5 years older than me. My mom did actually decide to keep her, and I was the one that was placed up for adoption. So reunited, and we reunited in 1999, so I was about 15, 16 years old. Everything was amazing. When I tell you picture perfect, everything was amazing the first 2 or 3 years. Like, it could not have been any more perfect. And then things slowly went left. It completely went left. My birth mother was trying, and I always say it, and I don't even know if this is the right way to put it, but this is how I felt. She was trying to raise me, and she's trying to raise me, and now I'm an adolescent. So it was like I was spending time with my birth mother. She's telling me, this is not right. This is what you have to do. That's not appropriate. This is what's appropriate. And then I'm at home with my adoptive family, and they're like, what do you mean? What is she talking about? So it caused a lot of friction between both families, and eventually everything just phased out and fell out. So then I was forced to have to choose holidays, choose time with everybody. It was very, very difficult, very, very emotional. Till this day, I don't think anybody has ever said, what did you want? Everything was about everybody else. So now I actually decided to move out of state to Maryland in 2018 after an on again, off again relationship with my birth mother and my biological sister. Moved here in 2018. About 3 months after I moved down here, they were back to their same old ways, and I have not spoke to them in probably almost 2.5 years. So I decided to stay down here. I found the love of my life, so I'm getting married in 4 months. So I said, everything happens for a reason. And just like Keith, I smile, even though it's very painful. I'm here to share my story. And I also have a platform that is really, geared toward advocating, educating adoptive parents on challenges that we go through and that we face, because often our voices are the ones that are silenced. And I just encourage other adoptees to speak up and share their stories. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Amanda. So much to unpack there. I really took away from that the relationships that we have with our birth families and the relationships we have with our adoptive families, how there can really be a tug of war. It almost feels like sometimes, I know that there's this loyalty that we feel towards our adoptive families, and that can definitely get complex and challenging to navigate, to say the least. You do have a wonderful platform. I think that education is so important and always useful for everyone. So thank you so much, Amanda. That was a great share. Just to share some background on myself as well. I was born in a small village outside of Arad, Romania. And I was actually never in an orphanage setting. I had lived in a home with my birth mother for 2 years prior to be putting up for adoption at age 2. She was straining to provide. The country was in shambles. Communism had just been brought to an end. And she was in a really unstable relationship with my birth father, who later was no longer in the picture. At the time, there was no better place than to go to America. And the very thought of me being adopted to an American family gave her a glimpse of hope that I would have a better life filled with more opportunity there. I had always known that I was adopted. My parents always took those steps to support at the time that was available. You know, they read children's books to me at night, and I remember always having conversations with them. Looking back now as an adult, I feel like those conversations definitely could have been a little more open, a little deeper. I think a lot about the way that things were phrased and the language in particular that was used. Around my 30th birthday, I was helping my mother clean out her apartment to put it up for sale. And that's really when I came across documents, photos, and information pertaining to my adoption that I had never seen before. Things like my birth mother's name, my birth name, which was Adriana, the court document that had told a story that I didn't quite have all the pieces to. I learned that I had a half sister who, in a similar way to Amanda, was not put up for adoption. And I decided that I really wanted to find more. And in my quest to write a book and fill in the missing blanks, I found the lawyer who handled my adoption. And I was really able to connect with him. And that led to a series of events, which I talk about in my book, that allowed me to connect with my roots. And I did discover my Roma or Gypsy roots. Those Roma and Gypsy are actually synonymous. I use them interchangeably, but I was able to connect with my Gypsy roots and meet my birth family in Romania. So I just wanted to share a little bit of background with you. Now we are going to share a brief anecdote with all of you. Something that we've really thought about that would be a good example, something that's happened in our lives that has really left a powerful mark on us, whether it be a conversation that was had or a situation that happened. And we really want to share those with you. So I'm going to go in the same order. Michelle, if you could just unmute and share with us.
Yes. So I have actually two in mind that are very important to me. One is trying, for adoptive parents, when you're going through the adoption process, try to get as much information as possible at that time. Being adopted, it's good in the whole adoption process, but internationally, it becomes more challenging to get these details. So things I wish my adoptive parents would have done a little differently is to get as much information as possible. Like the hospital I was born at, the orphanage I lived in, photos of my birth mother, information on her, perhaps more information of my birth father if it was possible at the time. Any kind of details would be helpful. We as adoptees will always have, the questions and what ifs, but if we can get as much information as possible from the beginning, it would help eliminate a lot of the unknowns. I've been spending, 33 years trying to put pieces together and get as much information. I'm still finding out, like, my journey is constantly unfolding, my story, I'm finding out new information every week, I swear, lately. And it's a lot, but it's things, and I'm happy, I'm very grateful that I'm finding this information out now, but it's just something I wish, was told to me when I was younger, and I knew all along. The second part is honoring your child's culture, wherever they come from. Again, at 33 years old, I am relearning my culture. I'm teaching my language, but I don't fault my adoptive parents because they didn't know, but I lost my identity and my first language. It was, I really strongly, encourage future adoptive parents or current adoptive parents of, especially internationally, I speak on for myself personally, is, celebrate the traditions. Like, I wish my parents would have celebrated the Romanian traditions with me, or the different holidays. We could have watched movies and documentaries together on it. They could have been more open about, sharing, or me sharing things with them. Different Romanian dishes we could have found and made together. I love relearning all this, but it's also very sad because I was Americanized very quickly. And I just truly wish Romania was part of me while I was growing up and I didn't have to lose all of that. but yeah, that is the two that are most important to me.
Great
Thank you.
points, Michelle.
Thank you.
And I can certainly relate to that, as I think many international adoptees can. Some of the key takeaways I took there were just gathering as much information as you can, and really embracing one's birth identity, which is so important. I can't stress that enough, because your birth identity matters, and it will always matter. Thanks, Michelle.
Oh, yes. So, kind of going with what Michelle was mentioning, yeah, truth and transparency from the beginning. As far as, where we come from, our roots, our ethnicity, our culture, and everything else. Okay, so for me, I had these physical characteristics, more of the Latin side, more of my Puerto Rican side, rather than the Hungarian side, right? So I grew up looking like this, and remember, I was never supposed to find out about being adopted. So here I am, a little brown skinned kid in a world, that knew that, but I didn't know it, and my adoptive family knew it. A little something else I should mention about my story real quick. I was adopted into a married family, but they got divorced when I was 4 years old, and then I didn't see him till I was about 21. So kind of grew up without a father, on top of the adoption stuff that I didn't find out till later in life. So, but there are a couple situations I could mention, both on two aspects. I'll say a negative and a positive. So growing up, my mother, who I know loves me, she would say things like, "You look like a Puerto Rican." I don't want to say the curse word she used to say. Like when I would comb my hair and it'd be curly, she would say, "You look like a Puerto Rican." And I'm here. I had no idea that that's actually literally part of my ethnicity. So, but I believe that her being truthful about everything from the beginning would have helped me to have dealt with that, or maybe she wouldn't have done that if I would have known. On the flip side of that, there was a situation where my mom and I, my little sister, we went on a cruise ship, and we went to a couple of those ports like St. Martin, St. Thomas, and also Puerto Rico, right? So we went to Puerto Rico. We were probably there for about 4 hours, and my mom, like nonstop, trying to tell me everything there was to know about Puerto Rico, right? Like she was trying to literally, she, so yeah, she was trying to tell me about my roots, but still I am here. I had no idea about who I was. So yeah, it's just like I said, it's painful, but even I smile a lot. But yeah, that's all I got.
Keith,
Yeah.
I'm sending you so much love right now.
Thank you, Keith. Really. These are not easy things to share, and I commend everybody for, really sharing everything that you are with us today. Thank you so much, Keith. Transparency, it's so important. As parents, whether you're an adoptive parent or not, I think, we always want to protect our children. And sometimes we may or may not think that, being secretive or shielding them from something that is so important and a critical piece of our child's life, we think that that's part of protection. But really, when it comes to adoption, it's just so important to really just tell us everything that share the details with us. It's a part of our story. And the words that we use are so powerful, both in a positive light or a negative light. We're very sensitive to the language and the words that are communicated to us. Thanks, Keith. Amanda?
Yes. Okay. Sorry, because I feel you, Keith. I really do. So one of the things that I mean, it was very apparent that I was different than my parents, me being the only, I mean, my brother, he could pass as their child. So I was the only brown person in the family. He had blue, piercing blue green eyes. I mean, he was a really adorable baby. And then you have me and my dad with this, strawberry blonde beard, and my mom with this long brown hair. So clearly I was, the oddball of the family. But the importance of representation in my life and having people around me who look like me is so important. And what I talk about most in my education is racial identity and representation, and how important it is for us to see us in other people around us, not just walking in the supermarket, but we need to see doctors, we need to see lawyers, we need to see teachers, we need to see police officers, and every aspect of our daily lives. And I didn't realize how much it had an impact on me until I got older. And one of the most, I guess, pivotal moments in my life was when I became a mother. And I was a young mother. I became a mother at the age of 21. Her father and I did not have the best relationship, but I made a promise to myself that I was not going to leave her. I was not going to abandon her. I was going to do what I had to do. So I got extra jobs. I went to school most in the morning, and then I worked a night shift. So I would go to work, and then I went through college so quick because I was like, I can't do this for a long time. So I went every semester throughout the summer, everything, just so I could get out and finish it, and I was done. So it was nice to have my daughter. She was 2 at the time at my college graduation. But when I was, pregnant with her, I said, how do I teach her about herself? How do I teach her about my culture when a lot of this stuff I don't know? I'm just trying to figure out for myself. And we go through our adolescent phases, right? We want to do stuff our way. We know everything. Everything is right, because I'm going through that right now because my daughter's 16 years old. So they know everything. And that's pretty much what I thought. And then now I'm about to be responsible for a whole human being, and I don't know anything. I don't even know how to change a diaper. Okay. So let's talk about, real life situations. So one of the most important things to me that my parents could have done differently is to find a therapist that was trauma informed, and a therapist that actually looked like me. I saw so many different therapists, and just like Michelle, I was depression, self-harm, thoughts of suicide. Little did I know that back then, but now I know that there's actually a lot of history of that in my biological family. So these are things that, although my parents were very supportive, it could have gone another way. So my heart goes out to all the adopted kids that the parents are not that supportive and aren't getting the appropriate therapy and attention that they need. Because sometimes I was told that I was being dramatic. Sometimes I was told it's not that serious. So it was a lot of internalizing all these emotions and having to deal with them myself. So when I started sharing my story, it was big. I decided to go big and go on YouTube and start just randomly uploading videos about my story. And I was like, what did you do, Amanda? Like, what did you just do? And I was like, can't take it down now. It's already out there. So one of the things is that, make sure your child has representation, make sure your child has groups. And I mean sports. I was in sports. And let me tell you, that was one of the biggest takeaways, one of the biggest things that my dad could do. He was my coach, he was my coach for basketball. He was my coach for softball. My mom used to do Girl Scouts with me. But again, I was always the only brown person in a lot of those situations. So finding a therapist that's trauma informed and that could mirror your child is number one. Number two, make sure that your child has other people to look up to, because guess what? When I was little, being a lawyer was a dream. I didn't realize that I could actually do it because I didn't see any other African-American lawyers. I didn't have an African-American doctor. So a lot of these things were very far for me. So when I got into college and I started to see more people, and I was like, wait a second, you're going to school for that? Like, wait a second, we could do that? And I know it might sound so, minute, but it wasn't, because this is not what I was exposed to. So now I have a daughter, and I'm raising her to, love and embrace everything about herself. And we have an amazing relationship. We have boundaries, but I mean, I will say that is my best friend, because we've just been through so much together. But she has actually witnessed me go through my own healing journey. And guess what? I started to heal, and now our relationship is getting so much better. So I'm just very open and honest with her about everything, about my biological mother and my sister. She started to recognize a lot of signs. And actually, she's the one who actually prompted me to start to like kind of step away and focus more on myself than to keep getting hurt over and over again. So our relationship is flourishing. And I found my own therapist who was trauma informed. And honestly, that was really, and I think I was 33 years old at the time. So that's a long time for, to find somebody that actually knows what you need. But the second I found that person, it was just like lights going off, and it was just completely different. And I'm a completely different person now than I was a couple of years ago.
That's incredible. Thank you so much, Amanda. So many great points that she touched on, having those appropriate supports in place early on, so important. The issue of racial identity, another great thing that you touched on. I think parenting as an adoptee could probably be an entirely separate workshop on its own, because I think there's so many different things there, so many great pieces there. And I can certainly relate to that, being a mom of 3 as well. But wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm going to share just a brief story with you. When my parents contacted the attorney who handled my adoption, he sent my parents a video of me still in Romania with my birth mother in the home that we were living in. And my parents always held on to this video, and I was always aware of it. They told me about it, but they would never let me watch it without them. I think in their minds, they thought that they were protecting me, thinking that it might be too difficult for me just to watch on my own. And they wanted to be there to hold my hand and just kind of like walk me through watching this video. And I always feel frustrating because I just wanted to watch it by myself. But I kind of just put it on the back burner in my mind, knowing that one day there would be a time that I would just get to watch this video on my own. And I really felt like I deserved to see it on my own terms. Or feeling guilty about crying in front of them or having whatever I would have organically. I just didn't want to feel that guilt with having it in front of I think what my parents could have said was, we'd really like to watch this video with you, but if you want to watch it by yourself, I understand. Some parts might be emotional for you or difficult to watch, but just know that I'm here for you if you want to talk about it afterwards. And to me, that response would just communicate support so much while giving me the space to process something that's meaningful to me. I touched on this a little earlier, but I think sometimes we feel like, we're always trying to protect our children, but giving some space, it's not that you don't care or that you don't want to be involved, but sometimes space is just so important to process certain things, and it can actually bring you closer. So I thought of that example, and I really wanted to share that with you. Okay, so make sure that we had plenty of time, because I'm sure you all have questions. I'm going to open the floor now for some Q&A. If there's any specific question geared towards somebody, feel free to mention that. Otherwise, you can just ask it and we'll all kind of just chime in. So I'm going to do that right now and open it for all of you. Miriam, are you going to?
Yeah, we don't have any questions yet, but I do have one to get us started. Everyone, feel free to put your questions in the chat. We can get through more questions that way. And we can ask you to come off mute if we have any more questions or want more information about your question. My question to get us started is, you all search for your birth families as adults or high school to adult. How can we as adoptive parents know when it's the right time or a good time for our children, our teenagers, our adult children to start searching and know that they have that support and encouragement to do it?
Great question. I know I have a response for this, but
I
I'm
do too,
the
but-
panelist. Yeah, here, go ahead. Go ahead,
Oh, okay.
Amanda.
I was going to say it's very important to allow your child to lead, because you may not know when they're ready. And I feel like I was ready before I said something to my mother. And the way that the conversation happened, I think I thought about how I was going to ask her for probably about 3 days. And the feeling was just in me, because there was just an absolute void in my body, in everything. And I was like, I need this filled. And I felt like the only way that it could be filled was if I knew my biological mother. So the conversation went through my mind, trying to have what she would say, you know, how she would respond, for about 3 days. And then she was trying to protect me. So she said, you know what? I don't know if this is a good idea. Do you know, she might not want to be found. This is, what might happen. But she really let me lead throughout the whole thing. What do you want to do? And I was like, I want to find her. Okay. So how do you think we should go about doing that? But then she also did a lot on the back end to support me and said, this is what I found. This is what I didn't find. This is the response. So she was really my backbone throughout the whole thing. And it did make that process a lot easier for me to go through, even though there was still that little bit of guilt. But she let me lead the entire thing, because I was too young to actually do anything myself. I was only 15. So my advice is let your child come to you. And if you have that open communication and that good relationship, then they should have no problem coming to you with that and asking you and saying, I'm ready to start the search. And sit down, have a talk with them, go over the pros and cons and make sure that they're aware of it. But that's pretty much it, because I don't think you could ever be prepared for a reunion. As much as you think in your mind, you could never be fully prepared, because there's ebbs and flows. It goes up and down, and you really don't know what their birth mother intentions are. So that's my advice.
Yeah,
Could I go next, or Yael, do you want to go?
no, go ahead, Michelle.
I want to go next because I want to kind of bounce off what Amanda just said. I would agree 100% is letting your adopted child lead in that decision. For me personally, I did not have a lot of support through the search. I remember going, like Amanda, like I've been like wondering how I'm going to address this to my adoptive mom in a way where she doesn't feel like she's not wanted by me anymore, or she's not enough. So I went to her and said, I want to search for my biological mother, but if it's going to hurt you, I won't do it. Because I wanted to keep her feelings in mind too, because again, I didn't want her to feel a certain way that, she's not important in my life. But she gave me the go ahead, she gave me the support. But I think my biggest advice is, don't just support the decision, support the result too. Because I went through the search process entirely by myself. I had to contact a lawyer. I had to do all the research on my own. And they only asked me, oh, so what did you find? It was never like, what can we do? Is there someone we can call? Is there some, how can we support you? I never had the hand holding, support throughout. And I honestly, I still don't. And that's something I really wish is, support through the end, because our journey is never over. And honestly, for me, the hardest years are also my adult life too, right now, because again, like I said before, I'm still finding out new information. And, I try to explain to my parents about it, and they don't know how to be there for me emotionally. So I kind of leave the house just feeling very like not validated, and just feel, again, I go back to that feeling of alone, So I do that. That is my big advice, to just, support decision and support all throughout as well. And the biggest thing you can tell someone to show support is what can we do? That's my advice. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly with both of you. Some things to add would just be, it's okay if you don't have the answer. I look back to a conversation I had with my parents, and, I would ask, is my birth mother still alive? And, the response that I got was, it's not likely because the conditions were so poor in Romania. And then I just convinced myself that she was no longer alive. And then fast forward all these years later, I find out that she was very much alive and she had a life in Romania. And then that became a whole new thing that I needed to process. So I think, nobody expects you as parents to have all the answers. And you can just say, I really don't know if your birth mother is alive or not. Maybe one day we can get those answers together. And, another piece that was brought up is, I think, this feeling of abandonment that adoptive parents feel, which is a very common feeling. And I experienced this with my mother as well when I spoke to her about wanting to do a search and wanting to reunite with my birth family in Romania. And, she was so taken back and she kept asking, I'm still your mother, right? I'm still your mother, right? Going back to that feeling of, abandonment, and this fear of abandonment rather. And, I think we need to let go of any insecurities that may exist and interfere with that level of support that we could show, because it has nothing to do with you. And, wanting to explore one relationship doesn't take away from another. So I think that's important to mention as well. And then just last note, I love that Michelle hit on this is, as we get older, the support, we still need support, we still have questions as we grow from a child to an adult and have our own family. Things are always evolving. Our perspectives are changing. We're getting new information, and that support is always needed. So, just because we're married, I'm married, I have 3 kids, I still need support. And I don't always feel that I get it either. So just something to think about.
Yeah, I do have just a few sentiments on the subject as well. So, keep in mind I'm a late discovery adoptee, so I was 33 when I found out. So I didn't have a choice but to search right after that. But I've lost a lot of family, biological family members to death beforehand, and I would have much rather have had those connections than the stories about those people. And I'll say this, something that I know, if you want to learn more about your adopted child, get to know more about their biological family. You'll see that there are things like being artistic or having a musical voice or being good at math, or a lot of things are genetically connected in some ways. So
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you for that. We actually have 2 people have posted similar questions. Brother Terry said, I'd like to hear your thoughts on how a social worker can assist our families to shift their perspective when they don't get it. And Aisha Harper said, I'm a social worker who facilitates searches and reunions for adult adoptees through my agency. What advice can you give me as I help adoptees through the search process? So both social workers have similar related questions.
I think that what should have been discussed with me in my search is, what do you want out of it? Adoptees search for all different reasons. One, it could be because of like medical history or something's going on. They need to know more medical, more background. 2, it could be my situation where I really just wanted to know who I looked like and who I favored and who I smiled like. So that was something that was really big to me. But I feel like when I went into the situation, I actually wanted more than what I thought. I wasn't prepared for that. The first time I met my biological mother, I did not want to go home. And I'm not saying this to scare any adoptive parent. I'm just a very open and transparent person, because I feel that's the only way that you guys are going to be able to learn. A part of me just felt she was just going to hold me, hug me, and say, I'm here. You found me. That's it. My dad had, my adopted father has said, they're not your family, we are. So I did have that back and forth for a little bit. But at the end of the day, this is not about my biological family and it's not about my adoptive family. It's about me. Because after everything is all said and done and everybody has left this earth, guess who's going to be here? Me, to deal with all this. So I'm a mother, I am about to be a wife. I am creating my own family, that I have my own things that I need to do. So for, other adult adoptees who are going through the search, I feel like it's very important for you to tell them it's not about anybody, it's about you and your journey. This is going to be the start to something that could be amazing. It could be, painful. There's so many emotions that go into reunion that you could never be fully prepared, like I said, but you really need to dig deep and find out what that adoptee wants to gain out of connecting with their biological family. So then in their minds, they could better, say, okay, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And if it doesn't work out this way, I can accept it and we'll just take it as it is and then move forward. I didn't have that. I just said, I thought everything was just going to be peaches and cream. And it wasn't like that after a couple of years. So I was out of school for 4 months, depression. I would literally just go inside the shower and just cry. And I could not tell anybody why. And it's because I expected more, but I just didn't know how to say it. And I wasn't getting more. So for, I guess it's Aisha, that's what I would say. Just, ask them what exactly do you want out of this reunion? What do you hope to gain? And then as far as how can you assist families shift their perspective when they don't get it? I mean, it's really, like I said, it's not about them. It's about the child. So I hope that helps.
Okay, Jasmine Harris Branchford, I hear it said to be proactive regarding informing a child about his or her adoption, but I am also hearing it said to let the child guide you. How do I best balance the two?
I guess I'll share a few thoughts on this. So as far as, letting the child guide you, I think that comes after the fact of the actual knowledge itself. I feel it's important for the adopted child to know as much as possible about their background, and then they can make their own informed decisions about how they would like to proceed with the parents' guidance. It's a lifelong journey.
Well,
Yes, I'm gonna bounce off of what Kate just said about I love what he said about let the adopted child lead, but after they know that they're adopted. For me personally, I wish I was told from day one. I hear that a lot within the adoption community is, a lot of us wish we were told from day one. And sometimes I'm sure it's hard for adopted parents to think that, well, they're so young, like what does it make a difference? But it really does when they grow up knowing, rather than almost, at least for me, I found out when I was 8 and I almost felt like it was a secret. It was a lie against me, and it wasn't malicious. Don't get me wrong. I know like I said, my parents did the best they could with what they had, what information they had. But I do sometimes wonder, a lot of people at our school and our community told my parents to tell her, you need to tell her. And that's what they told me. And I wonder, like, when would they have told me if they were encouraged by others to do that? Would I have been a late discovery? Would I have found out from another classmate or a parent at the school? How would I have felt if I was told by somebody else other than my parents? And like I said, I found out when I was just by my father, by himself. And to me, I almost felt in the moment I was abandoned by another mother, because my adopted mother was not a part of that conversation. And in a time where I am struggling, especially at such a vulnerable age, I needed my mother's comfort. I needed her there. So I hope that helps for everyone here.
Okay, along the same lines, Twilene lays right, when adoptive child's parent is deceased, when the child starts asking about their parent, when is the appropriate age to tell the child that their parents are dead?
Does she mean when the
Twilene, do you want to jump on? And I don't think I'm reading your question correctly.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, we can hear you now.
Okay. When is the appropriate age for the child to start talking? To tell them that their parent is dead. Like if the child is like 4 years old, how do we go about telling them mommy is the proper way to tell them that mommy and daddy is not here?
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, I could answer that because I mean, I don't know about my biological father, but my daughter's father passed away when she was 4 years old. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a conversation that I had to have with her. It was very difficult. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't have no support. I just literally said whatever came out, which was the truth. Obviously it was, age appropriate conversation, but I said, unfortunately, bad things happen in this world and he was in the wrong place at the wrong time and he's not going to be coming home. So, she's 4. How does a 4-year-old really process that information? But what she did is she kind of took it out on me a little bit. So, sometimes she would try to fight me and she would say, you're not letting me see my daddy. But it was more of just the comfort. I was there to comfort her. I said, what do you need me to do? Let's do this. Let's look at pictures. Do you know this is what daddy used to like to do with you? So it's a little bit different because he did have, some time with her. But as far as just telling them, I just told her. I didn't know what else, I didn't want to keep it from her. And obviously she was going to be asking where he was. But I feel like you just tell them. You tell them, they're going to ask questions. They're going to want to know exactly what's going on. They may not understand. And really, that's really parenting. There's no actual guidebook or rule book how to become a parent. We really pretty much go with the flow and go as we, go through life phases. So as soon as possible, you could tell them, because like Michelle said, if she would have found out about her adoption earlier, it probably would have been, I guess, less painful for her. And I feel like if I waited to tell my daughter until, a couple years or even months go by, then it would probably be like, why didn't you tell me earlier? In a way, that's kind of like a lie. It's not, but it's, even though you're not saying it, it's still, you're keeping something from them. So I would tell them as soon as possible.
So you tell them while they're young, but do you also explain later? Because I noticed that the family had told the little boy that his mom is in heaven, and this 4-year-old has no process of what heaven is, or who Jesus is, or
Of course.
being in a car accident, actually is.
Well, I actually, since I was not an expert, my child actually went to art psychotherapy, and that's where she
Okay.
processed a lot of things. I didn't tell her how he died. I just
Okay.
explained to her, that he was no longer here, if that helps.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm on mute. Sorry about that. Thank you. We're running out of time to ask more questions of the panelists. And so, yeah, Al, do you want to kind of wrap things up?
Yes. I want to thank all of our panelists and all of our attendees today. You've all been wonderful. I really hope that you enjoyed the session. Please make sure to provide feedback to the conference coordinators if you enjoyed this workshop and you think that it's something to bring back for future conferences.